The first thing I heard wasn't the sound of sirens. It was my mother's voice. Soft, broken, almost relieved. I tried to open my eyes. I couldn't. My body felt impossibly heavy. Every breath burned like fire. Someone squeezed my hand. For one desperate moment, I thought she had finally come to see me, that she would tell me everything would be all right. Instead, she whispered, if only Isabella had survived instead. Time stopped. The hospital room disappeared. Every machine, every heartbeat, every ounce of pain vanished beneath those 7 words. My younger sister, the daughter they had always loved, the daughter they would have chosen over me. Even now, even after I had pushed her out of the path of a speeding truck, even after I had given my own life to save hers, I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why. Why was I never enough? Why did every birthday belong to Isabella? Why did every achievement become hers? Why had I spent 25 years chasing people who had already decided they would never love me? But my lips never moved. The monitor beside my bed released one long, unbroken tone. Darkness swallowed everything. When I opened my eyes again, someone was shaking my shoulder. Serafina, wake up. The voice was annoyingly familiar. I blinked. Instead of white hospital lights, a crystal chandelier hung above me. Sunlight streamed through silk curtains. The scent of fresh lilies filled the room. My bedroom. The one inside Ashford Manor. No, that wasn't possible. I sat upright so quickly that my vision blurred. The room looked exactly as it had years ago. Cream-colored walls. Books neatly arranged on the shelves. The old piano in the corner. Even the tiny crack in the window frame was still there. A maid frowned at me. Miss Serafina? You'll be late. Late? For what? She stared at me strangely. For Miss Isabella's 18th birthday party. Birthday. Party. My heart skipped. I turned toward the antique calendar resting on the desk. May 12th. 7 years earlier. 7 years before my death. 7 years before the truck. 7 years before the hospital. 7 years before my mother's final words. My fingers trembled. I was alive. I rushed toward the mirror. A girl stared back. Long black hair. Clear gray eyes. No scars. No exhaustion. No sadness carved into her face. Only 19 years old. I slowly touched the reflection. Cold glass met my fingertips. Tears blurred my vision. I came back. I whispered. Not as a ghost. Not as a memory. I had been given another life. Another chance. The question was, what would I do with it? A loud knock interrupted my thoughts. Serafina. My father's voice. We're waiting. Waiting. Of course they were. Today wasn't just Isabella's birthday. It was the day my family would once again remind me exactly where I belonged. I remembered everything. Every cruel smile. Every comparison. Every forgotten birthday. Every accusation. Every sacrifice that went unnoticed. Including the one that eventually killed me. I inhaled slowly. Then smiled. A small smile. Not because I was happy. Because I finally understood something. I didn't need to change them. I only needed to stop expecting them to change. The grand ballroom glittered with crystal lights. Hundreds of guests filled Ashford Manor. Politicians. Business executives. Celebrities. Every important family in the city had come to celebrate Isabella. Gold balloons floated across the ceiling. A 12-tier birthday cake stood in the center of the room. An orchestra played softly near the windows. Everything looked perfect. As always. When I entered, almost nobody noticed. A few guests nodded politely before returning their attention to the staircase. Because that was where Isabella appeared. She descended slowly in a white designer gown. The room erupted into applause. My goodness. She's beautiful. The perfect Ashford daughter. She looks just like her mother. Flash after flash illuminated the ballroom. My mother rushed forward with tears in her eyes. Oh, Isabella. You look absolutely perfect. My father laughed proudly. That's my daughter. My daughter. Funny. He had to. I quietly walked toward an empty corner. Exactly where I had stood in my first life. A waiter approached. Champagne, miss? No, thank you. As I reached for a glass of water, someone bumped into me. Red wine splashed across my pale blue dress. The ballroom gasped. The woman responsible immediately covered her mouth. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Before I could answer, my mother's voice echoed through the room. Serafina. She hurried toward us. Not to ask if I was all right. To look at my stained dress. What happened? The woman apologized repeatedly. It was completely my fault. Mother barely looked at her. Instead, she turned toward me. Couldn't you be more careful? I stared at her. The woman blinked in confusion. Mrs. Ashford. I walked into your daughter. Mother smiled politely. It's all right. Serafina has always been clumsy. Clumsy. Even when someone else admitted fault, it somehow became mine. Around us, several guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. No one spoke. No one ever did. Isabella finally approached. Oh no. She frowned dramatically. Your dress. Then she removed the elegant shawl from her shoulders. Here. You can borrow this. The guests smiled. What a wonderful sister. So thoughtful. So kind. Only I knew the truth. That shawl wasn't kindness. It was performance. Just like everything else. In my first life, I had accepted it. Grateful. Embarrassed. Today, I gently pushed it back toward her. No, thank you. Her smile faltered. What? I said, I'm fine. For the first time all evening, silence settled over the ballroom. Mother frowned. Serafina. Don't be rude. I'm not. Your sister is trying to help. I didn't ask her to. Father's expression darkened. What kind of attitude is that? I looked at both of them. Then at Isabella. Then around the room filled with strangers who believed we were the perfect family. How many times had I stood here hoping someone would notice? How many times had I blamed myself for not being lovable enough? Not anymore. Without another word, I turned around and walked out of the ballroom. No tears. No apology. No explanation. Just left. Behind me, I could hear my mother sigh. Honestly, she's always trying to ruin Isabella's special day. I didn't stop walking, because, for the first time, her words no longer hurt. They simply confirmed what I already knew. I had spent an entire lifetime trying to become the daughter they wanted. In this life, I would become the woman I wanted instead. And when the day finally came that I disappeared, they would mourn a daughter they had never truly seen. They would search for someone who had already stopped belonging to them. For the rest of the evening, no one came after me. Not my parents. Not my brother. Not even Isabella. The birthday party continued exactly as if I had never existed. Music echoed through the mansion, while laughter drifted through the open windows. Guests toasted Isabella's future. Photographers captured every smile, and expensive fireworks painted the night sky in brilliant shades of gold. I watched it all from my bedroom balcony. 7 years ago, I had stood in this exact spot crying. I remembered wiping away my tears, convincing myself that my family hadn't meant to hurt me. I had believed if I worked harder, smiled more, became more obedient, one day they would finally see me. That day had never come. This time, I didn't cry. Instead, I quietly closed the balcony doors and went to sleep. The next morning, Ashford Manor buzzed with activity. The staff hurried through the halls carrying bouquets, wrapping gifts that hadn't been opened the night before, and cleaning the ballroom until every trace of the celebration disappeared. Downstairs, the family gathered for breakfast. An ordinary meal for everyone else. A daily reminder for me. I entered the dining room without saying a word. Father sat at the head of the long mahogany table, reading financial reports. Mother scrolled through photographs from Isabella's birthday party, smiling proudly at each one. My older brother, Adrian, barely looked up from his phone. Isabella entered last. The entire atmosphere changed. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mother said warmly. "Did you sleep well?" "I was exhausted," Isabella laughed. "Yesterday was wonderful." Father folded his newspaper. "It was perfect." Then his eyes shifted toward me. "Except for one unnecessary scene." I calmly poured myself a cup of tea. "I assume you're talking about me." Father's expression hardened. "You embarrassed this family." Mother sighed dramatically. "Your sister only wanted to help." Adrian finally looked up. "You've always been jealous of Isabella." The old me would have defended herself. I would have reminded them that I hadn't spilled the wine, that the guest had admitted it was an accident, that I had simply declined the shawl politely. None of it would have mattered. So I took a sip of tea instead. Silence. My lack of response seemed to irritate them even more. "Do you have nothing to say?" Father demanded. I placed my cup down carefully. "No." He frowned. "No. You've already decided I was wrong. So anything I say would be a waste of both our time." For a moment, no one spoke. It wasn't anger they felt. It was confusion. Because this wasn't the Serafina they knew. After breakfast, Mother stopped me in the hallway. "You're still upset." "I'm not." Then apologized to Isabella. For what? For ruining her birthday. I looked at her quietly. "Did I?" Mother crossed her arms. "You left the ballroom. So. People noticed." "They noticed because you pointed it out." Her face stiffened. "I don't know what's gotten into you lately." I smiled faintly. I finally grew up. Without waiting for another response, I walked away. Behind me, I heard her whisper, "Such an ungrateful child." Once. Those words would have broken me. Now. They meant nothing. That afternoon, I unlocked a dusty room at the far end of the mansion. Grandmother's library. Unlike everyone else in the family, Grandmother loved books more than parties. She often joked that libraries were safer than people. As I stepped inside, the familiar scent of old paper surrounded me. "You're hiding again." I turned. Grandmother Eleanor sat by the window, knitting quietly. Her silver hair shimmered in the afternoon sunlight. Unlike the others, she smiled when she saw me. "There you are." I walked over and hugged her. In my previous life, I hadn't hugged her enough. She patted my back gently. My poor girl. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I wanted to tell her everything. That I had died. That I had returned. That I knew the future. But I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I simply asked, "Grandmother, do you think people ever change?" She looked at me thoughtfully. "Sometimes. And sometimes they only become more honest about who they've always been." Her answer settled heavily in my heart, because deep down, I already knew which one applied to my family. Over the next few weeks, I changed. Not dramatically, quietly. I stopped attending family dinners unless necessary. I no longer waited for compliments. I stopped buying birthday gifts that no one appreciated. I no longer reminded Father about his meetings. I stopped proofreading Adrian's business presentations. I stopped fixing Isabella's school assignments behind the scenes. No arguments. No announcements. I simply stopped. The family didn't notice at first. Then small inconveniences began appearing. Father missed an important client meeting because no one reminded him. Adrian presented the wrong financial report during a board meeting. Isabella forgot to submit a scholarship application before the deadline. Mother blamed the household staff. No one blamed me, because no one even realized I had been quietly holding their lives together. One rainy evening, Father called everyone into his study. His face was grim. Someone leaked confidential information about our company. The room fell silent. Adrian looked furious. Mother immediately asked, "Who would do something like that?" Father's eyes landed on me. "Where were you yesterday afternoon?" Exactly the same question. Exactly the same accusation. Just like my first life. Back then, I had desperately tried to prove my innocence. Hours of explanations. Security footage. Witnesses. None of it mattered. They had already decided. This time, I simply answered, "In the library." "Can anyone confirm that?" "Grandmother." He frowned. "Anyone else?" "No." Adrian slammed his hand on the desk. "This is ridiculous. She always disappears whenever something happens." Mother sighed. "Serafina, if you've made a mistake, we can solve it as a family." I almost laughed. A family? When had they ever treated me like one? I looked each of them in the eyes, then calmly said, "If you've already decided I'm guilty, then there's nothing left to discuss." Without another word, I walked out of Father's study. Behind me, their voices rose. Accusing, complaining, judging. I didn't listen, because I already knew the truth. In 2 years, they would stand beside another empty room, another closed door, another silence they couldn't fill. And this time, when I disappeared, they wouldn't be able to accuse me ever again, because everyone, including them, would believe that Serafina Ashford was dead. People often believe someone disappears overnight. They don't. They disappear one choice at a time. One conversation they stop having. One invitation they stop accepting. One dream they stop sharing. Until one day, everyone wonders when they became a stranger. That was exactly how I intended to leave the Ashford family. Not with a fight. Not with a goodbye. But with silence. A month passed. Then another. Summer arrived, filling the Ashford estate with lavish garden parties and business dinners. To everyone else, my life looked exactly the same. I still lived in the manor. I still greeted the staff politely. I still attended the occasional family event. But beneath that ordinary routine, I was quietly erasing every trace of the girl I used to be. Every morning, while the family slept, I left the house before sunrise. I told the driver I wanted to visit bookstores. Sometimes I did. Most days, I went somewhere far more important. "Good morning, Miss Ashford." The elderly bank manager smiled as I entered his private office. "It has been a while." "It has." He gestured toward the leather chair. "How may I assist you today?" "I'd like to open a new investment account." He nodded. "We already manage your family's portfolios. This account won't be connected to them." That caught his attention. "You'd like it to remain confidential?" "Completely." He studied me for a moment before smiling professionally. "Very well." Within an hour, my first independent account existed. Only one person besides me knew about it. The bank manager. And unlike my family, he understood the value of privacy. As I signed the documents, I remembered something from my previous life. At 23, Father's company had invested in a struggling technology firm. Everyone mocked the decision. 6 months later, that company revolutionized artificial intelligence. Its value increased nearly 80 times. I smiled faintly. This time, I would invest first. Over the following weeks, I quietly built a future. Stock investments, real estate, small businesses that no one believed in yet. Every decision came from memories of the life I had already lived. It almost felt unfair. knowing tomorrow's winners, knowing tomorrow's disasters, knowing exactly where opportunity would appear. Money began growing faster than I had imagined. Not millions. Not yet. But enough. Enough to survive without anyone. Enough to disappear forever. Back at Ashford Manor. Nobody noticed. They were too busy preparing for Isabella's university entrance gala. Mother spent thousands selecting dresses. Father arranged interviews with prestigious magazines. Adrian boasted to his friends about his perfect little sister. Meanwhile, I ate dinner alone in the library. Exactly how I preferred it. One evening, grandmother quietly entered carrying 2 cups of tea. She placed one beside me. "You've changed." I looked up from my book. "Have I?" "You smile less." "I cry less too." She chuckled softly. "I suppose that's an improvement." For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Rain tapped gently against the windows. Finally, she asked, "Have you already decided to leave?" My heart nearly stopped. Did she know? I searched her face. She wasn't accusing me. She wasn't even surprised. She simply knew. I lowered my eyes. "What makes you think that?" "Because." She smiled sadly. "Your eyes no longer look toward this house." The room fell silent. Tears threatened to return. Not because she had exposed my secret, but because she had noticed me. Perhaps the only person who ever truly had. "I won't ask where you're going," she said. "I only hope, wherever it is, they deserve you more than we did." A lump formed in my throat. "I'll visit you. I know." She reached into her knitting basket and removed a small velvet box. I was going to wait until my birthday. But perhaps now is better. Inside lay an old silver key. Our family has owned a cottage by Silver Lake for generations. No one visits anymore. "It's yours." I stared at the key. "Grandmother, take it. If you ever need somewhere no one will look, go there." I hugged her tightly. She didn't ask questions. She didn't demand explanations. She simply held me like she'd been waiting years for me to let myself be comforted. The cottage became my sanctuary. Hidden among pine trees nearly 3 hours from the city, it overlooked a peaceful lake whose surface shimmered like glass. The house was old, small, quiet, perfect. Over the next several months, I transformed it into my real home. I renovated the kitchen, installed solar power, purchased new furniture, filled the bookshelves, created a secure office upstairs. No family photographs, no Ashford name, only peace. Standing on the porch one evening, I watched the sunset paint the water in shades of gold. For the first time, I felt safe. By autumn, my investments had doubled. I hired a lawyer under strict confidentiality, then an accountant, then a cybersecurity consultant. Everything operated through holding companies, anonymous trusts, private accounts. No connection led back to Serafina Ashford. If someone searched for me, they would find nothing. Exactly as planned. At Ashford Manor, life continued without me. Or so they believed. One afternoon, I overheard Mother speaking with a guest. "Where's your eldest daughter?" Mother laughed lightly. "Oh, Serafina keeps to herself. She's always been rather independent." Independent. An interesting word. Especially from the woman who never noticed I had quietly vanished from her daily life. Winter arrived. Snow covered the gardens. The mansion prepared for Christmas. In my first life, Christmas had been my favorite holiday. I decorated the tree, wrapped every present, cooked dinner alongside the staff, stayed awake until midnight making sure every detail was perfect. This year, I did none of those things. On Christmas morning, the family gathered downstairs. Mother frowned. "Where's Serafina? One of the maids answered carefully. Miss Serafina left early. Oh. Mother returned to opening Isabella's gifts. No one came looking for me. Instead, I spent Christmas at the lakeside cottage with grandmother. We cooked together, played old records, drank hot chocolate beside the fireplace. When snow began falling outside, she smiled. This is what Christmas is supposed to feel like. I smiled back. It really is. That night, as I prepared to leave, grandmother stopped me at the door. Promise me something. What is it? When you finally disappear, don't disappear from yourself. I frowned slightly. She squeezed my hand. Sometimes, people spend so long becoming invisible to others that they forget how to exist for themselves. Her words stayed with me all the way home. Because she was right. This wasn't only about escaping the Ashfords. It was about discovering who Serafina truly was. Without them, driving back through the sleeping city, I looked at the lights stretching across the horizon. According to my memories, exactly 1 year from now, a terrible accident would take place. The same accident that, in my first life, eventually led to my death. This time, it wouldn't be an accident. It would become my escape. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. The preparations were complete. The money was ready. The cottage was waiting. My new identity was almost finished. There was only one step left. I had to become a ghost. A daughter with no body. A name carved onto a gravestone. A memory that no one could ever find. Because only when Serafina Ashford died could I finally begin living. Exactly 1 year later, the day finally arrived. The day I had been preparing for since I opened my eyes in my second life. The day Serafina Ashford would disappear forever. The morning began like every other. Ashford Manor buzzed with servants preparing breakfast. Father argued with someone over the phone about a business merger. Mother discussed charity events with her assistant. Adrian rushed to an early board meeting. Isabella complained because her designer handbag hadn't arrived from Paris. Nobody noticed me walking downstairs. Nobody asked where I was going. Nobody cared. I calmly poured myself a cup of coffee. As I reached the front door, Mother finally looked up from her tablet. Where are you going? The lake. She nodded absent-mindedly. Be home before dinner. I won't. She frowned slightly. What do you mean? I'm staying overnight. Oh. She returned to reading emails. No goodbye. No, drive safely. Not even a smile. I quietly walked out of the house. Without realizing it, that was the last time any of them would ever see Serafina Ashford. The drive to Silver Lake took almost 3 hours. The roads were nearly empty. Soft rain tapped against the windshield. As I drove, memories from my first life played endlessly in my mind. Every birthday they forgot. Every achievement they ignored. Every time they defended Isabella without asking for the truth. Every time they called me selfish. While I quietly sacrificed everything. Even my life. By the time I reached the cottage, I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. Inside the cottage waited 3 people. My lawyer, my accountant, and Noah Carter, a former intelligence officer who now specialized in private security and identity protection. He stood as I entered. Good morning, Miss Ashford. I smiled. Actually, not anymore. He nodded knowingly. The documents are ready. He slid a leather folder across the table. Inside, a passport, a driver's license, university records, employment history. Everything belonged to another woman. Serena Hale. Age, 26. Occupation, investment consultant. Nationality, Canadian. It was flawless. Every document had been legally created through a government witness protection program available for certain international security cases. No forged papers. No illegal identities. only a carefully constructed new beginning. I stared at the passport. For the first time, Serafina Ashford truly had a future, even if the world believed she no longer existed. Noah unfolded a detailed map. Let's go over the plan one last time. I nodded. Every detail mattered. Every mistake could destroy everything. He pointed toward a narrow bridge crossing the lake. Your vehicle will be found here. Emergency responders will believe it lost control during the storm. He moved his finger farther downstream. The river current is extremely strong. Even if divers search, they won't recover a body. My lawyer added quietly. The DNA evidence has already been prepared. A few strands of my hair. A small amount of blood collected during a routine medical examination months earlier. Enough for identification. No questions. No suspicion. Only certainty. The certainty that Serafina Ashford had died. At sunset, the storm arrived. Dark clouds swallowed the sky. Thunder rolled across the mountains. Rain crashed against the lake in violent waves. Exactly like my memories. Exactly like the accident from my first life. Only this time, I wasn't the victim. I was the author. I drove the black sedan toward the bridge. Halfway across, I stopped. For a long moment, I simply sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel, watching the rain, thinking, was I really ready to lose my name, my past, everything? Then I remembered my mother's voice. If only Isabella had survived instead. My answer came easily. Yes. I stepped out of the car. The rain soaked me instantly. Noah appeared from the darkness, carrying a waterproof bag. You still have time to change your mind. I looked toward the roaring river below. No. I've already spent one life trying to belong. I'm not wasting another. Together, we pushed the car forward. Its tires rolled slowly, then faster. The guardrail shattered. For one breathtaking second, the vehicle hung suspended above the river. Then, it disappeared into the darkness below. A deafening splash echoed through the valley. Within seconds, the current swallowed everything. The bridge became silent again. Only the rain remained. Serafina Ashford had just died. The next morning, Ashford Manor erupted into chaos. A police officer stood in the entrance hall. Father's face had turned pale. What do you mean? The car was found? The officer removed his cap. We're very sorry. The vehicle went through the bridge during last night's storm. Mother's hands trembled. Where is she? We're still searching. Adrian grabbed the officer's arm. She could still be alive. The officer hesitated. The current is extremely dangerous. We found blood inside the vehicle. There were no signs anyone escaped. Mother slowly collapsed into a chair. No. No. Isabella covered her mouth. Oh my God. Servants began crying quietly. The mansion, once filled with noise, fell into absolute silence. The search continued for 3 days. Helicopters circled the lake. Divers searched the river. Rescue boats scanned every kilometer downstream. Television crews gathered outside the Ashford estate. The headlines spread across the country. Ashford heiress missing after tragic accident. On the 4th day, the police ended the search. No body had been recovered. But forensic evidence confirmed what everyone already believed. Serafina Ashford was presumed dead. I watched the news from a quiet hotel room hundreds of miles away. My new passport lay on the bedside table. Serena Hale. The name still felt unfamiliar. Noah switched off the television. It's over. I nodded silently. For some reason, I expected relief. Instead, I felt grief. Not for the Ashfords. For the girl named Serafina. The girl who had spent 25 years begging for scraps of affection. She had finally died. Not in a hospital bed. not saving people who never loved her, but by her own choice. I whispered softly, "Rest now. You've suffered enough." 1 week later, Ashford Manor held a funeral. A white coffin rested beneath hundreds of lilies. Empty. No body had ever been found. Only memories. Guests arrived dressed in black. Business partners. Politicians. Friends. People who suddenly spoke about what a wonderful young woman Serafina had been. How kind she was. How tragic her death was. How much she would be missed. Funny. None of them had spoken to me while I was alive. Hidden beneath a black umbrella. Standing among strangers. I attended my own funeral. No one recognized me. My hair had been cut shorter. Dyed chestnut brown. Colored contact lenses hid my gray eyes. Simple makeup softened every familiar feature. To them, I was just another mourner. To me, this was the final goodbye. I watched Father place a white rose beside the coffin. His expression remained unreadable. Mother cried quietly, whether for me, or because society expected her to, I couldn't tell. Adrian stood stiffly, staring at the floor. Only Isabella seemed strangely composed. Too composed. As guests began leaving, I overheard her whisper to Mother, "At least she's at peace now." Mother nodded. "Yes. I only wish things had been different. Different. Not better. Not kinder. Just different." Then, a familiar voice broke through the silence. "Grandmother." She stepped toward the coffin alone. Her hands rested gently on the polished wood. Tears streamed silently down her face. She whispered so softly that only I could hear, "I know you're alive." My breath caught. She continued without looking around. "I don't know how. But I know. Go. Live. Don't waste this second chance." Then, almost imperceptibly, she smiled. Not a smile of happiness. A smile of blessing. My eyes filled with tears. I wanted to run to her. To hug her. To tell her everything. Instead, I remained where I was. Because if I walked forward now, everything would be lost. Grandmother slowly turned and walked away. She never looked back. Neither did I. As the last mourners disappeared into the gray afternoon, I removed the small silver necklace from around my neck. The one grandmother had given me when I was 10 years old. I laid it gently on the fresh flowers covering my own coffin. One final gift. One final goodbye. Then I turned away. The wind carried the church bells across the cemetery as I walked toward the waiting car. Serafina Ashford had been buried that day. But somewhere beyond the horizon, a woman named Serena Hale had finally begun to live. 2 years later, the name Serafina Ashford existed only on a marble gravestone. Fresh white lilies appeared every Sunday. Someone always replaced the flowers. The cemetery caretaker assumed it was her family. He was wrong. It was me. I parked my black sedan at the entrance of the cemetery just after sunrise. The morning fog still clung to the ground. Dressed in a long beige coat and dark sunglasses, I looked nothing like the girl buried beneath that polished stone. My hair was now chestnut brown. My wardrobe was simple but elegant. Years of peace had softened the sadness that once lived in my eyes. To everyone who passed by, I was just another visitor. I walked slowly until I reached the familiar grave. The inscription read, "Serafina Elizabeth Ashford. Beloved daughter. Beloved sister." I stared at those words for a long time. Beloved. The irony almost made me laugh. In life, no one had called me that. Only after I was gone did they carve it into stone. I knelt down and replaced the wilted lilies with fresh ones. "I'm doing well," I whispered. "I hope you can finally rest." For a brief moment, it almost felt as though I were speaking to the girl I used to be. Then I stood. Without another word, I walked away. Halfway across the cemetery, I noticed another visitor. Grandmother. She stood beside my grave, leaning lightly on her cane. She gently touched the flowers I had just placed there. Then, without turning around, she smiled. I was wondering if you'd come today. I stopped walking. She still didn't look at me. Instead, she said quietly, "Your favorite lilies." I knew they weren't from the florist. A small laugh escaped my lips. I suppose I never fooled you. Grandmother finally turned. Her eyes shimmered with tears. My beautiful girl. I hurried toward her. For the first time in 2 years. I hugged her. Neither of us spoke. We simply stood there while the morning breeze carried the scent of lilies through the cemetery. "I've missed you," she whispered. "I've missed you too." She gently cupped my face. "You look happy." "I am. And that's all I've ever wanted." We spent the morning at a small cafe overlooking the river. No reporters. No bodyguards. No Ashford name. Just grandmother and granddaughter. She listened as I told her about my new life. Not every detail. Just enough. I bought a consulting company. I've expanded into renewable energy. I travel often. I finally sleep peacefully. Grandmother smiled proudly. I always knew you were capable of extraordinary things. You were the only one. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. No, I was simply the only one paying attention. Meanwhile, the Ashford family was falling apart. Slowly, quietly, exactly as I remembered. Only this time, no one was there to save them. Ashford Industries had once been one of the city's most respected companies. Now, profits had fallen for 6 consecutive quarters. Investors questioned father's leadership. Employees resigned every month. The media blamed poor management. No one understood why everything had started going wrong after Serafina's death. No one except grandmother, because she remembered something the rest of them never noticed. Whenever there had been a crisis, Serafina somehow solved it. Quietly. Without asking for recognition. Without expecting thanks. Now, those invisible solutions were gone. One afternoon, father sat alone in his office, staring at a stack of unfinished reports. "Where's the quarterly analysis?" he asked impatiently. His secretary hesitated. "Miss Serafina used to prepare those." Father frowned. "Then have Adrian do it." We did. "It contains several calculation errors." Father rubbed his temples. For the first time, he realized he didn't actually know everything I had done for the company. Adrian wasn't doing any better. After taking over several important projects, he lost 3 major clients within 6 months. Meetings became disasters. Contracts fell through. Deadlines were missed. Late one evening, he slammed a folder onto his desk. "Why is everything suddenly so difficult?" His assistant answered carefully. "Sir, Miss Serafina used to organize most of these negotiations." Adrian laughed bitterly. "Impossible. She never told anyone." "No, she simply did the work." Silence filled the office. For the first time, he wasn't angry. He was confused. At home, Mother wandered past my old bedroom almost every night. She never went inside. The room remained exactly as I had left it. Books neatly arranged. The piano untouched. A faded sweater still hanging behind the door. One evening, a maid quietly asked, "Mrs. Ashford, would you like us to clean Miss Serafina's room?" Mother looked toward the closed door. After a long pause, she shook her head. "No, leave it exactly as it is." The maid nodded. As she walked away, Mother whispered to herself, "I don't know why, but it feels wrong to change anything." Only Isabella seemed untouched. She attended charity galas, fashion shows, magazine interviews. Social media adored her. She smiled for every camera. But behind the perfect photographs, cracks had begun to appear. Without me quietly correcting her mistakes, She made them publicly. She forgot speeches, signed incorrect documents, repeated confidential information during interviews. The media started calling her the beautiful heiress who couldn't lead. Every article made her more desperate. One rainy evening, grandmother called me. "I think it's time." "For what?" "For you to come home." I stared out the window of my penthouse overlooking the city skyline. Home. There is no home. There is only the place where I used to live. Grandmother smiled softly through the phone. "Then come back. Not as Serafina, but as the woman you've become." The following week, Ashford Industries announced an international investment summit. Business leaders from around the world would attend. The company desperately needed new investors. So did Father. Because if this summit failed, Ashford Industries would collapse. Thousands of invitations were sent across Europe and Asia. One invitation went to a rising international investment firm called Hale Capital Partners. Its founder had become famous almost overnight. A mysterious entrepreneur whose face almost never appeared in public. Her name, Serena Hale. My name. When Father's assistant placed the list of confirmed guests on his desk, he skimmed it absent-mindedly, then stopped. Hale Capital? His financial advisor nodded enthusiastically. They've acquired 3 Fortune 500 companies in under 2 years. Their founder is brilliant. If anyone can save Ashford Industries, it's Serena Hale. Father nodded slowly. Arrange a private meeting. I want to secure her investment before anyone else does. Across the city, I looked at the same invitation resting on my desk. For a long time, I simply stared at it. This wasn't revenge. Not anymore. It was something far more powerful. Closure. I picked up a pen, signed my new name, then slipped the acceptance letter into an envelope. Serena Hale. The woman the Ashfords desperately needed was the daughter they had already buried. People say money changes people. They're wrong. Money doesn't change anyone. It simply reveals who they really are. The Ashfords hadn't changed. They were still arrogant, still proud, still convinced the world would always save them. The only difference was that this time, I wasn't there to save them. The Grand Crescent Hotel shimmered beneath thousands of crystal lights. The International Investment Summit was the most prestigious business event of the year. CEOs, politicians, royal investors, technology founders. Every influential name in the country had gathered under one roof. Outside, luxury cars stretched for nearly half a mile. Inside, journalists crowded the entrance. Camera flashes lit the marble lobby. Everyone waited for one person. The mysterious founder of Hale Capital. The woman who had quietly built a billion-dollar investment empire in less than 3 years. Almost no one had seen her face. Rumors surrounded her. Some believed she was the daughter of an old European banking family. Others claimed she was a former hedge fund manager from New York. A few insisted she didn't exist at all. No one knew the truth. A black Rolls-Royce stopped at the entrance. The crowd immediately fell silent. Security officers stepped forward. One opened the rear door. A pair of black heels touched the red carpet. Then, I stepped out. A tailored ivory pantsuit hugged my frame perfectly. A long camel-colored coat rested over my shoulders. Diamond earrings sparkled beneath the evening lights. My chestnut hair fell in soft waves. The gray eyes that once belonged to Serafina Ashford were hidden behind elegant hazel contact lenses. I wasn't trying to look wealthy. I simply looked like someone who no longer needed to prove anything. Camera flashes exploded around me. Miss Hale. Miss Hale, this way. Is it true you're buying another European energy company? Will Hale Capital expand into Asia? I smiled politely. No comments. My voice was calm, controlled, confident. The reporters kept shouting questions as I entered the hotel. Years ago, walking into a room like this would have terrified me. Now, it felt like another ordinary Tuesday. Across the ballroom, Father adjusted his tie nervously. He had already met 5 potential investors. Every one of them had politely declined. Ashford Industries was losing credibility. Without new funding, the company wouldn't survive another year. His assistant hurried over. "Mr. Ashford, Miss Serena Hale has arrived." Father straightened immediately. "Excellent. I'll speak to her personally." The ballroom doors opened. Conversations stopped. Dozens of executives turned toward me. Some smiled. Others whispered. A few simply watched with curiosity. I walked slowly across the polished marble floor. My posture remained relaxed. Every step echoed softly through the ballroom. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw them. Mother, Father, Adrian, Isabella. For one brief second, 25 years of memories crashed into me. Birthday parties, arguments, lonely dinners, the hospital room, my funeral. I inhaled slowly, then kept walking. They were strangers now. Nothing more. Father reached me first. "Miss Hale." He extended his hand warmly. "I'm Jonathan Ashford, the CEO of Ashford Industries. I've heard wonderful things about you." I looked at his outstretched hand. The same hand that had never once rested proudly on my shoulder. The same hand that had pointed toward the front door whenever I disappointed him. I smiled professionally. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Our hands met briefly. He didn't recognize me. Not even for a second. Mother stepped beside him. "You look so young. I expected someone much older." I laughed softly. "I hear that often." She smiled politely. "There must be someone at home who's very proud of you." For just a moment, time seemed to stop. Home, proud, words that had never belonged to me. "There was," I answered quietly. "But she's gone now." Mother frowned slightly. "I'm sorry." "So am I." She assumed I was speaking about a parent. In truth, I was speaking about Serafina. Adrian joined the conversation. "I've read your acquisition strategy. It's impressive. You take risks most investors avoid." I nodded. The greatest opportunities usually appear where everyone else sees failure. Father laughed. I couldn't agree more. The irony almost made me smile. Because years ago, he had looked at me exactly the way investors now looked at his failing company. A burden. A bad investment. Someone not worth believing in. Then, Isabella appeared. Still beautiful. Still perfectly dressed. Still carrying herself like the center of every room. She smiled brightly. "Miss Hale. It's an honor. I've followed your interviews. You've become an inspiration for women everywhere." I looked into her eyes. The same eyes I'd watched close in fear just before I pushed her away from the speeding truck. The same eyes that never cried at my funeral. "Thank you." She tilted her head. "This may sound strange, but you feel oddly familiar." My heartbeat remained steady. "Perhaps you've seen me somewhere." She laughed. "Maybe. If we met before, I'm sure I'd remember." "Would you? Would you remember the sister whose birthdays you forgot? The sister whose achievements you quietly claimed as your own? The sister whose room you never entered unless you needed something?" Apparently not. Dinner began. Each table seated 8 guests. By coincidence, or perhaps fate, I found myself sitting directly across from the Ashford family. Father eagerly explained his company's future expansion plans. Mother discussed charitable foundations. Adrian talked about new technology projects. Isabella smiled for everyone. I listened quietly. Then Father asked, "What do you think, Miss Hale? Would Ashford Industries interest your firm?" The entire table fell silent. Everyone wanted my answer. I placed my wine glass down carefully. Before making any investment, I study one thing above all else. Father smiled. And what is that? The people. He nodded confidently. A wise philosophy. I held his gaze. Companies rarely fail because of markets. They fail because leaders overlook the people quietly holding everything together. His smile faltered. Something about those words unsettled him, though he couldn't explain why. After dinner, the summit moved into the networking hall. Investors gathered in small groups discussing future partnerships. As I stood reviewing several proposals, an elderly waiter accidentally bumped into me. A tray of champagne glasses slipped from his hands. Without thinking, I caught the tray before it hit the floor. The old man looked horrified. "I'm so sorry, Miss Hale." "It's all right." I smiled gently. No one was hurt. The waiter relaxed immediately. Then something unexpected happened. Nearly every member of the hotel staff smiled at me. Not because I was wealthy. Because I had treated one of them with kindness. Across the room, Mother quietly watched. She frowned. For some reason, the scene reminded her of someone. Someone who had always thanked the staff. Someone who remembered birthdays. Someone who secretly brought homemade cookies to the kitchen every Christmas. A memory surfaced. Serafina. She shook her head immediately. No. Impossible. Serafina was dead. Late that evening, Father finally received the private meeting he'd been waiting for. Inside an elegant conference room, only 3 people were present. Father, his financial advisor, and me. He confidently presented Ashford Industries' future projections, growth forecasts, expansion plans, revenue estimates. When he finished, he smiled. "So, what do you think?" I closed the folder. Silence filled the room. Finally, I asked one question. "Mr. Ashford, tell me." He smiled politely. "What would you like to know?" "What happened to your eldest daughter?" The smile disappeared from his face. He hadn't expected that question. "Why do you ask?" "I read about her accident. I'm curious." His expression softened. "It was the greatest tragedy our family has ever faced." For the first time that evening, he wasn't acting like a CEO. He looked older, more tired. "I wish." He hesitated. I had understood her better. The room became unbearably quiet. Was it guilt? Regret? Or simply the realization that something valuable had disappeared? Before I could answer, a knock interrupted us. The assistant entered hurriedly. "Mr. Ashford, you need to come immediately. Our largest overseas client has canceled their contract." Father's face turned pale. "Cancelled?" "Yes. They've chosen another investment group." He stood abruptly. "I'm terribly sorry, Miss Hale. We'll have to continue this another time." He rushed out, leaving the proposal folder behind. I looked down at it, then quietly closed it. The Ashfords believed they had lost a business contract. They had no idea. They were about to lose something far greater. Because tonight, for the first time, they had unknowingly sat across the table from the daughter they had buried. And none of them had recognized her. 3 months after the investment summit, Ashford Industries officially declared bankruptcy. The news spread across every major television network. Ashford Empire collapses after 42 years. Banks froze company assets. Shareholders filed lawsuits. Business partners disappeared overnight. The family that once believed they were untouchable had nothing left. For the first time in his life, Jonathan Ashford sold his watch. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. The mansion was gone. The luxury cars were gone. The private jet. The vacation homes. The reputation. Everything. Mother quietly packed boxes in a small rented apartment. She paused when she found an old photo album. Inside, hundreds of pictures of Isabella. Birthday parties, graduations, family vacations. Then, one single photograph of Serafina. She was standing in the background, holding everyone's shopping bags, not looking at the camera. Mother stared at the picture for several minutes. Then she began to cry. I don't even remember taking this. Adrian visited the old Ashford office one last time. The lobby was empty. The lights had been turned off. His footsteps echoed through the building. Inside his former office, he found an old filing cabinet that had somehow escaped liquidation. Curious. He opened it. Inside were dozens of folders. Every one of them labeled in Serafina's handwriting. Client recovery plans, debt negotiations, legal risk assessments, emergency cash flow reports. He opened one, then another, then another. His hands began shaking. Every crisis the company had survived, every major client they had kept, every lawsuit they had avoided. Serafina had solved them. Quietly, without putting her name anywhere, without asking for credit. He collapsed into his chair. My God. It was always you. Isabella's perfect life crumbled next. Without family money, without media attention, without people constantly praising her. She struggled. Friends stopped calling. Luxury brands no longer invited her. The internet found old interviews where she had claimed credit for ideas that weren't hers. People began questioning everything. One evening, she sat alone in her apartment, looking through old text messages. Almost every conversation with Serafina ended the same way. Can you help me? Can you fix this? Can you do it for me? And every single time, Serafina had answered, yes, without complaint, without expecting anything in return. Tears rolled down Isabella's face. I never even said thank you. One rainy afternoon, the family received a letter. No return address. No sender. Only 4 words. To the Ashford family. Jonathan slowly opened it. Inside was a handwritten page. The handwriting was instantly familiar. Serafina's. Dear Mother. Dear Father. Dear Adrian. Dear Isabella. If you're reading this, it means the life I remembered has finally come to an end. You probably have many questions. Why did I leave? Why didn't I come home? Why didn't I tell you I was alive? The answer is simpler than you think. Because I already spent one lifetime trying to earn your love. I thought if I worked harder, became quieter, solved more problems, sacrificed more of myself, one day, you would choose me. But love isn't something you earn. It is something people freely give. And you had already given yours to someone else. So I stopped asking. I don't hate you. I don't want revenge. I only wanted peace. If you regret anything, don't regret losing me. Regret never knowing me while I was standing beside you. I hope one day, you learn to love people before they become memories. Goodbye, Serafina. No one spoke. Mother held the letter against her chest and sobbed until she couldn't breathe. Jonathan removed his glasses. For the first time, his children saw him cry. Adrian covered his face. Isabella whispered through trembling lips. We buried her twice. Once, when they ignored her, and again, when they believed she was dead. 6 months later, across the ocean, a new headquarters opened. Hale Foundation. Its mission was simple: to provide education, legal aid, and emergency housing for young adults abandoned by their families. Above the entrance, a small bronze plaque read, "No one should have to earn the love they deserve." Reporters asked Serena Hale why she had created the foundation. She smiled gently. Because someone once needed it. A year later, Grandmother Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her final request surprised everyone. She wished to be buried beside Serafina. At the funeral, Rain fell softly across the cemetery. The Ashford family stood together. Older, quieter, broken. As the ceremony ended, a woman wearing a black coat placed a bouquet of white lilies on grandmother's grave. She kept her head lowered. No one paid much attention. Except Jonathan. Something about her felt familiar. The way she stood. The kindness in the way she arranged the flowers. The quiet grace. Before he could speak, she turned and walked away. He took one step forward, then stopped. Some distances cannot be crossed, not after years of neglect. He watched the woman disappear through the cemetery gates. Deep inside, he knew, but he also understood. She wasn't coming back. Not this time. Serena drove away from the cemetery with tears quietly falling down her cheeks. Grandmother had been the last connection to the life she'd left behind. Now, even that chapter had closed. At the next traffic light, she noticed a little girl sitting alone on a park bench. No older than 8. Holding a worn backpack. Trying not to cry. Serena parked the car and walked over. "Are you all right?" The little girl nodded, then shook her head. "My parents left." Serena sat beside her. Neither of them spoke for a while. Finally, the little girl looked up. "Do you think someone like me can still have a family?" Serena smiled through her tears. "Yes. Sometimes. The family we're born into isn't the one we're meant to keep." She gently held out her hand. "Would you like to walk with me?" The little girl hesitated, then smiled. She took Serena's hand. Together, they walked toward the setting sun, not as strangers, but as two souls choosing a new beginning. Because Serafina Ashford had died years ago. But in her place, a woman had been born who no longer searched for love where it had never existed. She created it instead. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments. What would you have done if you were Serafina? Would you have gone back to your family, or walked away forever? If you enjoyed this original Rebirth story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next story of revenge, redemption, second chances, and unforgettable plot twists. Every week, we bring you brand new original stories filled with family betrayal, billionaire drama, emotional revenge, and powerful female leads who refuse to let their past define their future. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Until next time, remember, sometimes the greatest revenge isn't making people suffer. It's becoming so happy that they can never reach you again. Take care, and I'll see you in the next story. Red Heart.